7. Disturbing true scary stories from people living near abandoned places. Story 1. The Window Watcher. I found the photograph taped to my kitchen window at 3:47 a.m. on February 9th, 2024. It was a picture of me sleeping, taken from outside, from the second floor. I lived alone in the farmhouse on Berkeley Road, about 200 yards from the old Westfield Psychiatric Hospital. The hospital had been abandoned since 1998, its windows boarded, its gates chained. I'd bought the property cheap 6 months earlier, despite the realtor's obvious discomfort. She kept mentioning the hospital, kept asking if I was sure. I told her I didn't believe in ghosts. The photograph was Polaroid, the kind that develops instantly. My face was peaceful in sleep, but the angle was wrong. Too high, too close. I lived on the second floor of the farmhouse. There was no ladder outside, no tree branches near that window. I called the police at 4 a.m. Deputy Morrison arrived at 4:32, examined the photo, examined the ground below my window. No footprints in the soft earth, no disturbances. He asked if I had enemies, asked about ex-boyfriends. I had neither. He took the photo as evidence and told me to install better locks. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The second photograph appeared 3 nights later. Same window, same Polaroid. This time I was awake in the photo, sitting at my kitchen table, eating cereal. The angle was from behind me, through the kitchen window. But that window faced the hospital. Nothing but overgrown fields and that massive, dark building between my house and anything else. The timestamp on my phone when I found it, 2:13 a.m. The timestamp visible on my laptop screen in the photograph, 11:47 p.m. Someone had been watching me for over 2 hours before placing the photo. I called Morrison again. He came back, more concerned this time. He walked the property with his flashlight, examined the hospital fence line. Everything was chained shut, undisturbed. He suggested cameras, suggested staying with friends. I installed 6 cameras the next day. Motion activated, night vision, covering every angle of the house. I watched the feeds obsessively on my phone. Nothing. Empty fields. The dark hospital looming in the distance. The third photograph came 4 nights after that. It was me, asleep again. But wrong. The angle was from directly above, as if someone had been on my ceiling, looking down at my bed. My eyes were closed. My mouth was slightly open. And in the corner of the photo, barely visible, was a pale hand holding the camera downward. The hand had 7 fingers. I checked the cameras immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely swipe through the feeds. Nothing. No motion detected inside the house. All doors and windows secured. I scrolled back through 12 hours of footage. Empty rooms, still furniture, nothing. But the photograph existed. It was real, physical, taped to my bathroom mirror where I'd see it first thing in the morning. I started sleeping in my car after that, parked in my driveway with the doors locked and the engine running. I could see the house and the hospital from there. Could watch both simultaneously. Nothing moved in either place. The hospital remained dark and dead. My house remained empty and still on the camera feeds. On the 7th night in my car, I woke at 3:17 a.m. to condensation on the inside of my windshield. Someone had been breathing against the glass. And there, drawn in the fog with a fingertip, were the words, "Come home." The handwriting was mine. I drove into town, to a 24-hour diner, and sat there until dawn. I called Morrison again. He met me there at 6 a.m., looking exhausted. He'd been doing research, he said. The psychiatric hospital had a history, A doctor named Kellerman had conducted experiments there in the 1960s. Photography experiments. He'd been obsessed with capturing the human soul at the moment between waking and sleeping. He'd taken thousands of Polaroids of patients without consent. The hospital had been shut down after 17 patients died in their sleep over a single weekend. All of them had been found with Polaroids clutched in their hands, pictures of themselves, taken from impossible angles. Kellerman had disappeared the same night, never found. Morrison asked if I wanted to leave, to sell the property and move. I should have said yes, but something had shifted in me over those sleepless nights. A kind of anger. This was my house. I'd paid for it. I wasn't being driven out by photographs and condensation. I went back that afternoon, checked every camera, every lock. Everything was secure. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, forcing myself to act normal, to reclaim my space. At 7:38 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Kitchen camera. I looked at the feed. I was sitting at my kitchen table. The camera showed me clearly, in real time, drinking coffee. But I could also see, in the background of my own camera feed, standing directly behind my chair, a thin figure in a hospital gown, holding a Polaroid camera. The figure's head was tilted at an unnatural angle, studying me. I spun around. Nothing there. Empty kitchen. But on the phone, the figure remained, perfectly visible, raising the camera to its face. The flash went off on my phone screen, white light filling the camera feed. I heard the mechanical whir of a Polaroid developing. Not from the phone, from directly behind me. I ran, out the front door to my car, fumbling with keys. I could hear footsteps inside the house now, slow and deliberate, moving from room to room. All 6 cameras showed the same thing. The figure, walking through my house, taking photographs. In some feeds, it was in the living room. In others, simultaneously, it was in my bedroom, in my basement, in my attic. The same figure in multiple places at once, all of them taking pictures. Morrison found me in the diner again at 9 p.m. I showed him the camera feeds. We watched together as the figure moved through my house, multiplying. 2 of them, then 4, then 8, all photographing empty rooms, photographing each other, photographing nothing. He called for backup. 3 deputies. We drove to the house together at 10:15 p.m. The front door was open. Inside, the walls were covered in Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Every surface papered with photographs. They were all pictures of me. Sleeping, eating, showering, sitting in my car, standing in the diner. Every moment of the past 6 months, including moments I was certain I'd been alone. And in every single photograph, standing just behind me or just out of my peripheral vision, was the figure in the hospital gown, always watching, always photographing, always there. But it was the last wall that made Morrison grab my arm and pull me toward the door. The wall in my bedroom was covered in fresh Polaroids, still developing, the images slowly clarifying. They were pictures of us, the 5 of us, standing in the house, looking at the photographs, taken from angles that should have been impossible, taken from where we were standing, taken from inside our own positions. The most recent photo was still warm to the touch. It showed Morrison reaching for his gun. It showed me screaming. It showed the 3 deputies backing toward the door. It had been taken 2 seconds ago. We left, abandoned the house. Morrison called it a crime scene, but I knew better. You can't arrest a ghost, can't prosecute something that exists in the space between seconds. I never went back. The house sits empty now, cameras still running, feeds still streaming to my phone. I watch sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep in my new apartment 60 miles away. The figure is still there, still photographing. The walls have become completely black with overlapping Polaroids, layer upon layer, years of photographs accumulated in just months. Last week, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It was taken yesterday. It shows me in my new apartment, asleep in my new bed. The angle is from directly above, and this time I can see the ceiling in the photo's reflection. It's covered in Polaroids. Hundreds of them, all of me, all taken in this new apartment I've lived in for only 9 days. The figure is already here, has always been here. I'm starting to understand that it's not the hospital. It's not the house. It was never about the location. Dr. Kellerman was trying to photograph the soul, the space between waking and sleeping. I think he succeeded. I think he found a way to exist in that space, in the peripheral, in the moment before you notice being watched. And I think when I bought that house, when I dismissed the warnings and moved in anyway, I gave him permission. I invited him to watch, to document, to exist in my blind spots. 3 nights ago, I woke at 3:47 a.m., the same time I found the first photograph. I looked at my phone, at the camera I'd installed in this new bedroom. The feed showed me in bed, eyes open, staring at the phone. It also showed my hand, extended toward the nightstand, holding something. I wasn't holding anything. My hands were empty, clutching the phone. But in the camera feed, my hand gripped a Polaroid camera, and my face, on the screen, was smiling. Not my smile. Someone else's expression wearing my features. I watched as the figure on the screen, wearing my body, using my hands, raised the camera and pointed it at the lens. The flash went off. I heard the whir of development. And I felt something in my hand, solid and real. I looked down. I was holding a Polaroid. It was still developing, the image slowly clarifying in the dim light. It was a picture of someone sleeping in a bed, not me. Someone else. A woman I'd never seen before, in a room I didn't recognize. On the back, written in handwriting that might have been mine, were 9 words. Your turn to watch. Your turn to document. Your turn. The photograph is still warm in my hand. Story 2. The Echo House. The abandoned mill on Sutter's Creek had been making sounds for 17 days when my daughter started repeating them. She was 4 years old. Her name was Emma. On March 3rd, 2023, she began humming a melody none of us recognized, low and industrial, like machinery grinding against stone. My wife, Rebecca, asked where she'd learned it. Emma pointed out her bedroom window toward the mill, half a mile across the meadow. The building taught me, she said. The mill had been closed since 2011. A textile factory before that, a grain mill before that, built in 1873. We'd moved into the converted barn beside it 6 months earlier, drawn by the cheap rent and rural quiet. The property manager mentioned the mill once, casually. It makes noises sometimes. Old buildings settle. But buildings don't settle in patterns, don't settle in rhythms, don't settle with purpose. The sounds had started on February 14th. Low vibrations at first, felt more than heard. By the 20th, they developed into distinct mechanical sequences. Clanking, grinding, the whisper of belts on wheels. The mill had no power, no squatters. I'd checked twice, walking the perimeter with a flashlight, peering through broken windows into vast, empty spaces where machines had once stood. Nothing inside but rust and shadows. Emma's humming became more complex over the next week. She'd sit at breakfast, eyes unfocused, producing sounds no 4-year-old should be able to make. Harmonic frequencies that made my teeth ache. Rhythms that felt like they were counting down to something. "Where does the song come from?" Rebecca asked her on March 9th. "From the workers," Emma said, chewing her toast. "They want us to know the schedule." "What workers, baby?" "The ones who never left." Rebecca looked at me across the table. We'd been careful not to mention the mill's history around Emma. She couldn't have known about the accident. 1927. 43 workers killed when the boiler exploded during night shift. The building had continued operating afterward. 3 more decades of production, thousands more workers, everyone trying to ignore what had happened in the sub-basement. That night, at 11:43 p.m., our bedroom wall began vibrating. Not shaking. Vibrating with that same low frequency, steady and purposeful. I pressed my hand against it and felt the rhythm, a pattern repeating every 17 seconds. Emma appeared in our doorway, backlit by her nightlight. "They're starting the machines," she whispered. "We should go watch." "Go back to bed, honey," Rebecca said, her voice tight. "But they're waiting," Emma insisted. "They want to show us how it works." I walked her back to her room, tucked her in. Through her window, I could see the mill silhouetted against the moonlight. Every window was dark. But I could hear it now, not just feel it. The grinding of gears that didn't exist. The rhythmic pounding of presses that had been scrapped 40 years ago. I closed Emma's curtains and stood in the hallway, listening. The sounds were coming from inside our house now, from the walls themselves. Rebecca stood in our bedroom doorway, pale. "It's getting louder," she said. She was right. Over the next 3 days, the vibrations increased in intensity and complexity. We could track them moving through the house, starting in Emma's room, traveling through the walls to the kitchen, the living room, our bedroom, then back again. A circuit, a pattern. Emma followed them sometimes, pressing her ear against different walls, nodding as if confirming something. "They're teaching." "Me?" she said on March 13th, when I found her with her cheek against the refrigerator listening. "They need someone who understands." "Understands what?" "The timing. Everything has to happen at the right time, or people get hurt." My stomach turned cold. "What people, Emma?" She looked at me with eyes that seemed older than 4. "The new workers, us." I called the property manager that afternoon, asked about the mill's history, the accident, anything that might explain what was happening. He was quiet for a long moment. "You're hearing it too now," he said finally. "What do you mean, too?" "Every family that's lived in that barn, they all start hearing it after a few months. Most leave within 2 weeks. You've lasted longer than the others. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? Would you have rented the place?" He sighed. "Look, I don't know what it is. The mill's been examined by engineers, paranormal investigators, everyone. There's no power, source, no explanation. But it cycles every few years, gets active, makes its noises, eventually stops. How long until it stops?" Another pause. "The last family? It didn't stop. It just got louder until they left. That was 14 months ago. You're the first tenant since then." I hung up and found Rebecca in Emma's room. Our daughter was asleep, but her lips were moving, whispering numbers. Rebecca had been recording her. She played it back for me. 17, 34, 51, 68, 85. "She's been counting in 17s for an hour," Rebecca whispered, "even in her sleep." That night, At 2:19 a.m., all the sound stopped. Complete silence. The sudden absence was worse than the noise had been, like the moment before a scream stretched into minutes. Rebecca and I lay in bed, not touching, barely breathing. Then Emma started laughing, not her normal laugh. Something rhythmic and mechanical, matching the pattern we'd been hearing for weeks. We ran to her room. She was sitting up in bed, eyes open but unseeing, laughing in those horrible mechanical intervals. On her bedroom wall, written in what looked like condensation, were words in a language I didn't recognize. But beneath them, translated in a child's handwriting, shift begins at 02:34. All workers report to stations. The clock on her nightstand read 2:32 a.m. Emma, wake up. Rebecca shook her, but our daughter continued laughing, the sound perfectly synced with vibrations that were starting again in the walls. 2:33 a.m. The mill whistle blew. I'd researched the mill. That whistle had been removed in 1983. Scrapped. Gone. But I heard it clearly, echoing across the meadow, calling workers to their shifts, calling us. Emma stopped laughing, her eyes focused. She looked at me with complete lucidity and said, "We're late. The foreman gets angry when we're late." Then she stood and walked toward her bedroom door. Rebecca grabbed her, but Emma was stronger than she should have been. She pulled away with force that sent Rebecca stumbling backward. Our daughter walked down the hallway, down the stairs toward the front door. I caught her before she reached it. She fought me, scratching and biting, screaming words in that unknown language. Through the front window, I could see lights in the mill. Not possible. No electricity. But every window blazed with industrial yellow light, and I could see silhouettes moving inside. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Walking to their stations, beginning their shift. "Let me go!" Emma shrieked. "I have to clock in. 17 minutes late is termination." Rebecca was calling 911, her voice panicked and breaking. I held Emma, who was thrashing with inhuman strength, her small body rigid and wrong. The vibrations in the house had become violent now. Pictures falling from walls, dishes rattling in cabinets. And then Emma went limp, completely still. Her eyes cleared. She looked up at me, confused and terrified. "Daddy, why are you holding me so tight?" The lights in the mill were gone. The vibrations stopped. The whistle fell silent. Emma had no memory of the past 5 minutes. She was exhausted, disoriented. Rebecca held her while I checked every window, every door. The mill stood dark and empty across the meadow, as if nothing had happened. The paramedics arrived at 3:07 a.m. They found nothing wrong with Emma. No fever, no signs of seizure. Vitals perfect. They suggested stress, night terrors, perhaps a psychological evaluation. We said we'd consider it. We didn't sleep. At dawn, I walked to the mill. The main door was chained, but I found a broken window and climbed inside. The vast factory floor was empty, exactly as it had been before. Rust and shadows. Dead machines. But on the wall near what had been the main assembly line, written in something dark and old, I found a work schedule. It listed names. 43 names. The workers, who died in 1927. And at the bottom, added in fresh marks, Emma Pritchard, Station 17. Orientation complete. Below that, 2 more names. Rebecca Pritchard, Station 34, pending. David Pritchard, Station 51, pending. We packed everything that afternoon. Emma was quiet, withdrawn. She kept looking out the car window at the mill as we loaded our belongings. "They're disappointed," she said softly. "The foreman says we broke contract." "What contract, baby?" "The one we signed when we moved here." when we accepted their space. We were gone by nightfall. Found a motel 60 miles away. Emma seemed to improve immediately, talking normally, playing with her toys, acting 4 again. Rebecca and I began to relax. Perhaps it was over. Perhaps distance was all we needed. At 11:43 p.m., our motel room wall began vibrating. Emma sat up in her bed. "Oh," she said, disappointed. "They followed us." The sounds were different now. Not machinery. Footsteps, dozens of footsteps, marching through the walls, circling our room. Emma tilted her head, listening. "The foreman says we can't quit," she explained. "We signed on for the full shift. That's how it works. Once you're scheduled, you have to complete your time." "How long is the shift?" Rebecca's voice was barely audible. Emma thought about it. 96 years. That's what the others are working. That's how long until their debt is paid. What debt? For living. For using the space. For breathing the air that belongs to the mill. Emma yawned. "Don't worry. It goes fast. The others say after the first 30 years, you barely notice anymore." The footsteps stopped. The vibrations ceased. In the sudden silence, I heard something else. That mechanical grinding, that industrial rhythm, but distant now. Coming from inside my own chest, from my heartbeat, my lungs. My daughter and wife heard it too. I could see it in their faces. The rhythm had synchronized with our bodies. We'd become part of the machinery. We drove through the night, then the next night. Kept driving. But the sounds followed. Not from outside anymore. From inside. Our heartbeats matched the 17-second pattern. Our breathing synced with the rhythm of long-dead machines. Emma stopped talking about it, but I'd catch her whispering to her hands, as if receiving instructions. We found a new apartment 300 miles away. Tried to resume normal life. Emma went back to preschool. Rebecca returned to work. I got a job in IT. We pretended everything was fine. But at night, at 11:43 p.m., we all stop what we're doing. We stand, we move to our positions. Emma to the corner of her room, Rebecca to the kitchen, me to the living room. We don't discuss it. Don't fight it anymore. We work our shifts. I don't know what we're doing. What invisible products we're assembling with our standing and waiting and breathing in rhythm. But I can feel the productivity in my bones. Can sense the quotas being met. Emma has been promoted twice. Rebecca is training for management. I'm approaching my 1700th hour. Sometimes, late in our shifts, I see them. The other workers. Translucent figures standing beside us, mirroring our positions. 43 of them. They've been working since 1927. They look tired. But they nod at us with something like approval. Like welcome. The foreman appeared last week. I couldn't see him, but I felt his presence. Heavy and old and patient. He stood behind Emma, and she straightened her posture, becoming more focused. He says we're doing well, she translated. He says in 95 years and 7 months, we can apply for retirement, if our performance reviews are satisfactory. Rebecca started crying. Emma patted her hand. Don't cry, Mommy. The foreman says crying counts as a break. Unauthorized breaks go on your permanent record. We're settling into the routine now, learning our stations, understanding the timing. The mill trained us well during orientation. We know the consequences of being late, of missing shifts, of trying to quit. Last night, at 2:34 a.m., our new neighbors started hearing the sounds. I saw them through their window, confused and frightened, pressing their hands against vibrating walls. They have a son, maybe 6 years old. He was already humming the melody, Emma waved at him. He waved back. "New workers," she said happily. "Station 68, 85, and 102. They'll learn fast. Everyone does. The mill is 300 miles away, but distance doesn't matter. The mill isn't a place anymore. It's a system, a pattern, a debt that compounds across generations." I tried to warn our neighbors yesterday, caught the father by the mailbox and started to explain. But my voice came out wrong, mechanical and rhythmic, speaking in intervals that matched the 17-second pattern. He backed away, frightened. Emma was right. And after, "You've been working long enough. Communication becomes difficult. You start forgetting the language of people who aren't workers. Start thinking in shifts and quotas and production rates." The foreman has been visiting more frequently. He stands in our kitchen during breakfast, observes our technique. Last week he left something on the counter, a manual, handwritten in that unknown language that I'm starting to understand. It's a training guide for when we become supervisors, for when we're responsible for recruiting, for maintaining the system. I'm starting to see the beauty in it, the efficiency. 43 workers weren't enough. The mill needs to grow, needs to expand production. The foreman has shown me the plans, thousands of units, millions of workers, everyone synchronized and productive, and finally understanding their purpose. Rebecca resists more than Emma and I do. She still cries sometimes during shifts, though she's learned to do it silently. The foreman doesn't like wasted time, doesn't appreciate inefficiency, but she'll adjust. We all do eventually. Tonight is special. The foreman told Emma it's our 90-day evaluation. If we pass, we'll receive our permanent assignments. If we fail... Emma didn't translate that part, but I could see it in the foreman's posture. There is no failing. There is only working or becoming material for the machines. The vibrations start in 17 minutes. Shift begins at 11:43 p.m., as always. We're already moving to our stations. Emma is excited. She thinks she'll make floor supervisor by month 6. Rebecca has stopped crying. I've stopped questioning. The mill is quiet now, 300 miles away. Empty and dark and patient. But its work continues. Through us. Through everyone who gets too close. Everyone who signs the invisible contract by choosing to live in the mill's shadow. I can hear our neighbors starting their shifts through the wall. The son is humming. The father is arguing with something unseen. The mother is crying. They'll learn. We all learn. The machinery is patient. The debt is long. The shift never ends. And the foreman is always watching. Story 3. The arrangement. The abandoned Suncrest retirement home had been making deliveries to my porch for 6 weeks when I finally opened one of the packages. Inside was a denture case, engraved with the name Margaret Holbrook. The teeth inside were still bloody. I lived at 447 Pinewood Drive, directly across from Suncrest. The facility had closed in 2018 after the scandal. 17 residents dead from neglect, staff members prosecuted, the whole operation shut down overnight. The building had sat empty for 5 years before I bought my house in October 2023. The first package arrived November 3rd. A small cardboard box, no return address, sitting on my welcome mat at 6:30 a.m. when I left for work. I assumed it was misdelivered and left it there. By evening, it was gone. The second came November 7th. Same plain brown box, same lack of markings. This time I brought it inside but didn't open it. I was busy. I forgot about it. The next morning, it was back on the porch. Outside. though my doors had been locked all night. The third, fourth, and fifth boxes came on November 10th, 14th, and 18th. I stacked them in my garage. Whatever game this was, I wasn't playing. But each morning, any box I'd brought inside would be back on the porch, waiting. Not carried, not moved, just returned to its proper place. By mid-December, I had accumulated 23 boxes. They filled my porch. My neighbors started asking questions. I called the police. Officer Yates examined the packages, noted the pattern, one every 3 to 4 days, always appearing between 2 and 6 a.m. He opened one. Inside was a pair of reading glasses. The lenses were cracked. The frames were bent. And there were fingernail scratches on the interior, as if someone had been clawing at them from the inside while they were being worn. Yates went pale. He checked the glasses against his phone, comparing them to something. "These match," he said quietly. "These belonged to Harold Kemp, one of the residents who died at Suncrest. He was found in his bed wearing these. Medical examiner documented them in the death report." "That's impossible," I said. "Those glasses were evidence. They'd be in storage or buried with him 4 years ago." Yates looked at the retirement home across the street. "You're living in the employee housing, aren't you? This building used to house the night shift nurses." I nodded. My real estate agent had mentioned it. Former staff quarters, converted to a single-family home, sold cheap after the scandal. I thought it was a deal. Yates opened another box. Inside was a medication bottle. Empty. Name on the label? Dorothy Chen, another victim. He opened a third. A hearing aid. Name engraved on it, James Rostow. "Stop," I said. "Stop opening them." But Yates was already reaching for the fourth. His hands were shaking. Inside was a wedding ring, and attached to it, impossible and horrible, was a finger. Desiccated, mummified, but recent enough that I could still see the nail polish. Rose pink. The tag dangling from it read, "Margaret Holbrook, Room 14. I vomited in my driveway while Yates called for backup. They took all 23 boxes, opened each one in my garage while I sat on the porch, not looking. I heard their reactions, though. The gasps, the swearing, the quiet moments of horror. When they finished, Detective Reeves sat beside me. "Every item belonged to one of the deceased residents," she said. "Personal effects that should be with families or in storage. Some should be buried. We're going to investigate how they got here." "They come from across the street," I said. "From Suncrest." "The building is sealed? Has been for years. We'll check it, but I see movement in there sometimes. At night, in the windows." Reeves studied my face. "What kind of movement?" "Shapes, people-shaped. Walking the hallways, going room to room, following schedules." She was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Tennant, have you been under unusual stress lately?" I laughed. It sounded broken. "You're asking if I'm crazy while standing next to a box containing a dead woman's finger. We don't know that's real yet. Could be a hoax, someone trying to scare you." But it was real. The lab confirmed it the next day. Margaret Holbrook's finger, removed post-mortem, preserved through unknown means, along with documented personal effects from 16 other deceased residents. The police searched Suncrest that afternoon. I watched from my window as they entered with flashlights and cameras. They were inside for 40 minutes. When they emerged, Reeves looked confused. "Nothing," she told me later. "Building is completely empty. No evidence of entry. No disturbances. Dust is thick everywhere. No footprints, no indication anyone's been inside for years." But the packages. "We don't know where they're coming from, but not from inside that building. Physically impossible. No packages came for 3 days after the police search. I started to relax, started to believe it was over. Then on December 23rd, I found something new on my porch. Not a box, a wheelchair. Old, institutional, with Suncrest stenciled on the back. The seat was stained with something dark. And in the seat, written in what looked like dried blood, was a message. Shift starts at 11 p.m. You're covering Unit 3. I called Reeves. She came immediately, photographed everything. But as we stood there examining it, I heard something. A voice, faint and old and angry, coming from across the street. Nurse Tennant, you're late. Residents are waiting. Reeves heard it too. Her hand went to her gun. We both stared at Suncrest. No lights, no movement. But the voice came again, clearer now. Nurse Tennant, report to station immediately. Policy violations will be documented. My name isn't Nurse Tennant, I said. I'm not a nurse. I just live in the old... The understanding hit me like ice water. The building didn't care who I was, only where I lived. I occupied the space that had belonged to night shift nurses. The position, the function, therefore, I was the nurse. The voice came a third time, and now I could place it. Administrative, authoritative. The kind of voice that had spent decades issuing orders to overworked staff in an underfunded facility. This is your final warning, Nurse Tennant. Clock in or face termination. The wheelchair rolled backward 3 feet, by itself, the wheels squeaking in rhythm. Then it stopped, angled toward my front door, as if waiting for me to sit. Get inside, Reeves said. Lock your doors. I'm calling this in. But as I turned toward my house, every light in Suncrest came on. Not possible. No power. But every window blazed with fluorescent light, harsh and institutional. And I could see them now. Dozens of figures. Residents in hospital gowns, walkers, wheelchairs, moving through hallways, sitting in common rooms, living their routines. All of them were watching my house. Reeves was already backing toward her car, speaking rapidly into her radio. I stumbled inside and locked my door. Through my window, I watched Suncrest. The lights stayed on. The figures continued their routines. And in the front entrance, standing in the doorway, was someone in scrubs. A nurse. She was gesturing, beckoning, calling me to work. My phone rang at 10:57 p.m. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Nurse Tennant, the voice said. That same administrative tone. You have 3 minutes to clock in. After that, we'll have to come get you. Policy is very clear about abandoned shifts. I'm not a nurse, I said. You have the wrong person. You occupy nurse housing. You accepted the position when you signed your lease. The contract is binding. What contract? I bought a house. There's no... Check your closing documents. Page 47, subsection D, right of first refusal on employment. I hung up, but I found myself pulling out the purchase paperwork, flipping through pages with shaking hands. The document was thick. I'd signed it without reading completely. Who reads every word of a house purchase? Page 47. Subsection D. Buyer acknowledges property's historical use and accepts responsibility for maintaining facility relationships. In the event of staffing shortages, buyer agrees to provide reasonable assistance as needed. It was vague, probably meaningless legalese, but it was there, signed, dated. A knock at my door at 10:59 p.m. I looked through the peephole. The nurse from Suncrest's entrance was standing on my porch. Up close, I could see she was wrong. Her scrubs were rotted. Her skin was gray. Her eyes were sunken but alert. "You're late, dear," she said kindly. "First night jitters, completely normal. But the residents need their 11 p.m. medications. We can't keep them waiting." "Go away," I managed. "Oh, honey, it's not that simple. We're so understaffed. Have been well, since the incident. The residents are still here, though. Still need care. Still need someone to check on them, help them, make sure they're comfortable. They're dead. The residents are dead." The nurse smiled sadly. "Yes, but they haven't realized it yet. And it would be cruel to tell them. So we maintain routines. Keep them calm. Give them their medications. Even though medications don't work on the dead, we give them anyway. Because it's about dignity, about respect. I'm not doing this." Her smile faded. "You accepted the position. If you refuse your duties, we'll have to file a complaint. And complaints lead to consequences." Behind her, more figures were emerging from Suncrest, shuffling across the street in gowns and slippers. Residents, dozens of them. They moved slowly but deliberately, crossing my lawn, surrounding my house. "Last chance," the nurse said. "Clock in voluntarily, or we'll invoke the mandatory employment clause." "What clause?" "The one where the position fills itself. The job demands a nurse. The housing guarantees a nurse. If you won't be that nurse." She gestured to the residents now pressed against my windows, peering in. "Well, positions can be shared. They'll help you understand your duties, from the inside." One of the residents, a man with an empty medication cup, began rattling my doorknob. Others joined him, testing windows, examining entry points, not breaking, not forcing, just checking. Methodically identifying how they would get in when permitted. My phone rang again. "Time's up," the administrative voice said. "We're coming in. Per your contract, entry for work-related purposes is authorized." The front door unlocked. I'd locked it. I'd checked it. But the deadbolt turned by itself with a heavy click. The nurse entered first, followed by 17 residents. They filed in calmly, organizationally, taking positions throughout my living room. The nurse pulled out a clipboard that hadn't been in her hands a moment before. "Let's get you oriented," she said. "Unit 3 is our memory care ward. 16 residents currently. They'll need vital checks, medication distribution, and assistance with evening routines. You'll do rounds every 2 hours. Questions?" "This isn't real," I whispered. She looked at me with something like pity. "You're going to do wonderfully. Previous night nurses struggled at first too, but they all adjusted eventually." "What happened to the previous nurses?" She didn't answer, just handed me the clipboard. The paper was old, yellowed, filled with names and room numbers and medication schedules from 2018, the night the facility closed, the night the residents died. "Your shift ends at 7 a.m., she said. "We expect punctuality. The residents depend on you." Then they left, all of them, filing out of my house in orderly lines, crossing back to Suncrest. The lights in the facility remained on. I could see them resuming positions in their rooms, waiting. The clipboard was still in my hands, real, solid. The paper had weight. I tried to leave, got in my car at midnight, determined to drive away and never come back. But the car wouldn't start. Engine turned over, but wouldn't catch. I tried my other vehicle, same problem. Called a cab. It never arrived. The driver later claimed he couldn't find my address. His GPS kept routing him elsewhere. At 1:17 a.m., my phone rang. "Nurse Tennant, you missed the 1 a.m. medication round. The residents are becoming agitated. Please report immediately. Through my window, I could see figures at Suncrest windows. Watching, waiting. I don't know what happened. Next, I have flashes. Memories that feel like dreams. Walking across the street in my bathrobe. Entering Suncrest through doors that opened without keys. The interior exactly as it had been. Fluorescent lights, waxed floors, the smell of disinfectant and old age. Residents in every room. They looked at me with gratitude as I checked their vital signs. Vitals that didn't exist. Pulses that didn't beat. I distributed medications from a cart that appeared when I needed it. Pills that dissolved on tongues that no longer swallowed. They thanked me, called me dear, asked about their families. I answered with lies that felt scripted, provided by some knowledge I didn't possess. I adjusted their pillows. I helped them to bathrooms. I documented everything on charts that filled themselves. At 7 a.m., I was back in my house. I'd lost 8 hours. The clipboard was gone. But I felt exhausted, like I'd worked a full shift. And on my porch was another box. Inside was a name tag. It read, Nurse Tenant, Unit 3, Night Shift. It's been 4 months now. I work 5 nights a week, sometimes 6. I've stopped trying to resist. The car works now, but only during the day. Only when I'm not scheduled. The residents know me. Remember me between shifts, even though they shouldn't remember anything. Mrs. Kowalski always asks about her son. Mr. Henderson needs help finding his glasses. Margaret Holbrook, missing her finger, likes me to read to her before bed. They don't know they're dead, and I've learned not to tell them. The day staff comes too. I've seen them now. Ghosts like the residents, maintaining routines. We overlap during shift changes at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. They brief me on incidents. I brief them on the night's events. We discuss care plans for people who don't exist. The administrative voice calls if I'm late. The packages still come sometimes, not threats anymore, but supplies, bandages, medication cups. Once, a new stethoscope with my name engraved on it. I tried to sell the house last month, but the realtor couldn't find buyers. People who tour it feel wrong, she says. Uncomfortable. Like the house doesn't want them, only wants someone who will fulfill the contract. I'm training a replacement now. The new owner of 449 Pinewood, the other former staff housing unit. Her name is Sarah. She moved in 3 weeks ago. The packages started arriving at her house yesterday. She called me, panicked, asked if this happened to me too. I told her yes. Told her about the clause, about the shift, about the residents who need care, even in death. She's fighting it, like I did. But she'll learn. The facility needs staff. The residents need care. The contract guarantees both. Tonight is the anniversary. April 1st, 2024. 6 months since my first package. The nurse supervisor, the gray one in rotted scrubs, told me there's a celebration planned. The residents are excited. They've been talking about it all week, though. They can't remember why it's special. I'll work my shift. I'll distribute medications. I'll check vitals on bodies that have been dead for 6 years. I'll smile and nod and maintain the illusion. Because that's what the job requires. That's what I agreed to, whether I meant to or not. And sometimes, late in my shift, I catch my reflection in darkened windows. I'm graying. My skin is taking on that same pallor. My movements are becoming automatic. I think I'm becoming permanent staff. I think I've been dead for a while now and just haven't noticed. The residents would understand. They lived here for years before they died, and they're still living here now. The transition is seamless if you don't think about it too hard. My shift starts in 40 minutes. I should get ready. The residents need me. They always need me. And I've learned that need, given enough time and enough contract language, becomes indistinguishable from reality. The packages will arrive at Sarah's house tonight. She'll receive her name tag soon. Maybe we'll work together. Maybe she'll take the day shift. The facility is growing. More housing units nearby, more contracts, more staff needed for all these residents who don't know they're dead. Suncrest is hiring. We're always hiring. And we honor our employment contracts. Forever. Story 4. The development. The model home at Clearwater Heights had been showing itself to me for 3 weeks before I realized I'd never actually visited it. I remembered touring it vividly. The granite countertops, the vaulted ceilings, the master bath with the garden tub. I remembered the sales agent, Valerie, with her sharp suit and practiced enthusiasm, handing me brochures. I remembered signing papers at the kitchen island. But when I checked my bank records on January 8th, 2024, there was no down payment, no transaction, no record I'd ever been inside. The development had been abandoned mid-construction in 2019. Financial collapse. The builder had completed 11 homes before going bankrupt. Those 11 houses stood finished but empty. Streets paved but pristine, streetlights installed but dark. No one had bought them. No one had moved in. The whole subdivision sat frozen, waiting for a bankruptcy court to liquidate the assets. I lived in the farmhouse that predated the development. My property bordered the entrance. For 4 years, I'd watched those empty houses through my kitchen window. Perfect, sterile, still. Until November of 2023, when the model home started turning its lights on, just at dusk, 6:47 p.m. every evening. The lights would come on, living room, kitchen, upstairs bedrooms. They'd stay on until 11:30 p.m., then go dark. I assumed it was on a timer, security measures, someone protecting the investment. But on November 14th, I saw movement in the windows. A figure, walking from room to room. Purposeful, deliberate. I called the police. Deputy Morris checked the house, found it locked and empty. No power connected, no utilities active. He even checked the breaker box. Everything switched off, some components removed entirely by vandals or salvagers. Yet that night, the lights came on again at 6:47 p.m. I started watching more carefully, taking notes. The pattern was consistent. Lights on at 6:47, movement visible between 7:15 and 8:30. Upstairs bathroom light on at 9:45, everything dark by 11:30. Someone was living a schedule in an empty house with no electricity. On December 3rd, I walked over there. Stood on the perfect front lawn, looking at the lit windows. Inside, I could see a living room. Furniture that hadn't been there during Deputy Morris's search. A couch, a coffee table, a television playing something I couldn't make out. I knocked on the door. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Valerie stood there. Same sharp suit, same practiced smile. But her eyes were wrong, too fixed, too glassy. Mr. Hendricks, right on time. Come in, come in. Let me show you what we've done with the space. Valerie, this house is supposed to be empty. What are you... Oh, we've been expecting you. You signed the contract last month, remember? Closing was December 1st. You own the property now. Come see your investment. I didn't remember signing anything. But I followed her inside anyway. The interior was furnished, completely, tastefully, exactly as a model home should look. Kitchen smelled like cookies. Living room had soft music playing. Everything was warm and inviting and utterly impossible. As you can see, we've staged it exactly to your specifications, Valerie said, gesturing around. The HOA is finalizing the welcome package. Your neighbors are excited to meet you. What neighbors? Nobody lives here. The development is abandoned. She laughed. Abandoned? Mr. Hendricks, Clearwater Heights is thriving. All 11 homes are occupied. We're a real community now. Through the back window, I could see the other houses. Lights were on in all of them. Figures moved in windows. Driveways had cars. One house had Christmas decorations. None of that had been there 30 minutes ago. I need to leave, I said. Of course, but don't forget, HOA meeting is Thursday at 7. Your attendance is mandatory per the bylaws. Section 12, paragraph 4. I backed toward the door. Valerie's smile never wavered. As I reached for the handle, she added, "Oh, and Mr. Hendricks? We have a strict policy about abandoned properties. Homes that sit empty for more than 30 days are subject to HOA action. You've been absent for 5 weeks now. We'll need to see occupancy soon. I don't live here. I live in the farmhouse. Yes, for now. But you signed the contract. You committed to the community. Clearwater Heights takes commitment very seriously." I ran, back across the perfect lawn, down the perfect street to my actual home. When I looked back, the model home was dark, empty. The other houses were dark too. No cars, no decorations. Just 11 abandoned structures in various states of completion. I checked my documents that night. Every paper, every email. No record of any purchase, no contract, no interaction with Valerie beyond my imagination. But on my kitchen counter, I found a key. Brass, new, attached to a keychain that read, "Clearwater Heights, Home Summer 1, Hendricks." I threw it in the trash. It was back on the counter the next morning. The lights in the model home continued their pattern. On at 6:47, off at 11:30. I stopped watching, closed my curtains, tried to ignore it. On December 17th, I received mail. An envelope with no stamp. Inside was an HOA violation notice. Property at 7734 Clearwater Drive has failed to maintain landscaping standards. Front lawn exceeds permitted grass height by 2.3 inches. Fine, $500. Please remedy within 72 hours or face escalating penalties. 7734 Clearwater Drive, the model home, the address they claimed I owned. I drove into town that afternoon, found a lawyer, showed her the notice, explained the situation. She searched property records. "There's no 7734 Clearwater Drive in any database," she said. "The development was never completed enough for official addresses. According to the county, those houses don't legally exist." "Then how did I get this notice?" She studied the paper. "This isn't real. Can't be. There's no HOA registered for Clearwater Heights. No legal entity to issue fines. Someone's messing with you." But the paper felt real. Had weight. Had an official seal I could feel embossed into the fiber. That night, someone knocked on my farmhouse door at 7:03 p.m. I looked through the peephole. A man in his 50s, wearing a polo shirt and khakis, holding a casserole dish. "Mr. Hendricks, I'm Phil Garrett, 7742 Clearwater Drive. Wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. My wife made her famous tuna casserole." I didn't open the door. "This isn't Clearwater Heights. This is my farmhouse." "Oh, I know. But you're part of our community now. Once you sign the covenant, we're all neighbors. Distance doesn't matter. Commitment does." "I didn't sign anything." Phil's smile tightened. "The HOA begs to differ. You've been delinquent on your dues for 6 weeks. That's $300 in late fees, plus the $500 from the landscaping violation. We accept check or money order. Get off my property. Mr. Hendricks, I'm trying to help. The HOA board can be unpleasant when residents don't cooperate. You should come to Thursday's meeting. Clear this up. Meet your neighbors. We're very welcoming to people who respect community standards. He left the casserole on my porch and walked away. Not toward a car, just away, down my driveway. When he reached the road, he turned toward Clearwater Heights, walking down the unlit street between empty houses. I didn't touch the casserole. In the morning, it was gone. Thursday, January 4th, 7 p.m. My television turned on by itself. The screen showed a conference room. Long table, 11 chairs, 10 of them occupied by people I didn't recognize. The 11th chair at the head of the table was empty. A placard in front of it read, Hendricks. Valerie sat at the far end. Oh, good. Mr. Hendricks is joining us remotely. Let's begin. First order of business, delinquent dues and outstanding violations. Turn it off, I said to no one. This isn't happening. But I couldn't turn it off. The remote didn't work. The power button didn't work. The screen showed my empty chair and the 10 residents staring at it expectantly. Mr. Hendricks, Valerie continued, your account shows $800 in unpaid fees. Additionally, your home has been unoccupied for 43 days, violating our residency requirements. The board must vote on remedial action. I don't live there. I shouted at the screen. All 10 residents turned to look directly at the camera, directly at me. You signed the covenant, Phil said. You accepted membership. Clearwater Heights is a commitment forever. Motion to invoke Clause 7, someone else said, a woman with severe gray hair. Abandoned properties revert to HOA control. We force occupancy. Seconded, Phil said. All in favor? 10 hands raised. 10 voices. Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Hendricks, you have 72 hours to establish primary residence at 7734 Clearwater Drive. Failure to comply will result in Clause 7 enforcement. Meeting adjourned. The screen went dark. I unplugged the television, unplugged everything. Sat in darkness, trying to think. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Welcome packet has been delivered. Please review community guidelines. Your move-in date is January 7th, 11:59 p.m. See you soon, neighbor. Clearwater Heights, HO. On my porch was a thick binder. HOA. Rules and Regulations. 300 pages. I flipped through it, hands shaking. The clauses were insane. Mandatory community participation, required attendance at monthly meetings, restrictions on visitors, on vehicle colors, on outdoor decorations, on noise levels, on basically every aspect of life. Penalties for violations ranging from fines to community service to status adjustment. I didn't know what status adjustment meant. Clause 7 was highlighted. Properties remaining unoccupied for 45 consecutive days are subject to forced occupancy measures. HOA may take any necessary action to ensure compliance with residency requirements, including, but not limited to, property modification, resident relocation, or status adjustment of the owner to match community needs. January 7th. I had 3 days. I tried to leave. Packed my car that night, determined to abandon the farmhouse and run. But my car wouldn't start. Engine was dead. Battery was new, but completely drained. I tried my other vehicle. Same thing. Called a cab. It never came. Tried to walk. Made it half a mile before I found myself back at my farmhouse. I'd walked in a straight line. I'd watched myself walking away. But somehow my feet had brought me in a circle. Clearwater Heights wouldn't let me leave. January 7th. 11 p.m. I sat in my farmhouse with every light on, doors locked, windows secured. At 11:57 p.m., someone knocked. I looked through the peephole. All 10 residents stood on my porch, smiling, waiting. "Mr. Hendricks," Valerie called. "Time to come home. Your house is ready. Your neighbors are waiting. Your commitment must be fulfilled." "I'm not going. Clause 7 has been invoked. We're authorized to assist with your relocation." The front door unlocked. I'd locked it. I'd checked it. But the deadbolt turned with a heavy click, and the door swung open. The residents filed in, calm, organized. They moved through my farmhouse, examining my belongings, nodding to each other. "Nice place," Phil said, "but not compliant with community standards. You understand?" "We'll help you pack," the gray-haired woman said. "Moving is always stressful. That's what neighbors are for." They began gathering my things. Not roughly, not quickly. Just methodically. Packing boxes that appeared from nowhere, loading them onto a truck I didn't own. "Please," I said. "I don't want to live there. I never agreed to this." Valerie put a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was cold. "Mr. Hendricks, everyone feels this way at first. The transition is always difficult. But once you're settled, once you understand how wonderful community truly is, you'll be grateful." "What if I refuse?" She smiled. "Then we invoke your status adjustment. Instead of a resident, you become something else. Something that serves the community in other ways. The foundation needs maintenance. The pipes need monitoring. The structure needs sustaining. There are many roles available." I tried to run. Phil caught my arm. His grip was impossible, like being held by stone. "Don't make this harder," he said. "We're being kind. We're giving you the resident option. The alternative is much less pleasant." They walked me across the street. To the model home, number 7734. The lights were on. Furniture in every room. My furniture, my belongings, already arranged, already organized. "Welcome home," Valerie said. They left me standing in the living room, alone. The door locked behind them. I tried it immediately. Wouldn't open. Windows wouldn't open. I was sealed inside. But it was decorated exactly to my taste. Pictures I recognized on the walls, photos I'd taken, printed and framed, my books on the shelves, my coffee mug in the kitchen. Everything perfect, everything mine, everything wrong. I've been here for 3 weeks now. The door unlocks at specific times, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., noon to 1 p.m., 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Windows, allowed to open during those times too. I can leave the house during permitted hours, walk the perfect streets, wave to my neighbors. They're always outside during permitted hours. Phil washing his car, the gray-haired woman gardening, kids playing in yards, kids I never see during non-permitted times. We have conversations, normal ones, about weather, about property values, about the upcoming community barbecue. But at 6 p.m., we all return to our houses. Doors lock, lights follow their schedules. We live our routines in perfect synchronization. I tried to go back to my farmhouse last week during permitted hours, but I couldn't find it. The street leading there was gone. Clearwater Heights has expanded. There are now 30 houses, all occupied, all perfect, all impossible. My farmhouse is gone, or I'm gone from it. I can't tell anymore. The HOA meeting was last night. I attended in person this time. 11 residents sitting around the table. We discussed landscaping, standards. We voted on paint colors for the community fence. We approved next quarter's budget. Everything was normal. Everything was proper. Everything followed the guidelines in the 300-page binder. At the end, Valerie smiled at me. "You're adjusting well, Mr. Hendricks. We're so pleased. You'll make an excellent permanent resident. Permanent? Well, yes. The covenant is binding. Forever. Once you commit to community, you commit completely. I looked around the table. At Phil, at the gray-haired woman, at the others. Their smiles were fixed. Their eyes were glassy, like Valerie's. Like mine are becoming. I caught my reflection in the conference room window last night. I was smiling the same way. That practiced, empty smile. My eyes had that same glassy quality. I'm becoming permanent. The development is growing. I can see new houses appearing. 40 now, 50. Streets extending into impossible directions. More residents moving in. All of them wearing that smile. All of them living their permitted schedules. New people tour the model home every week. I see Valerie showing them around, see her handing them brochures, see them sign papers at the kitchen island, the island that's now in my home, since mine is the model now. They never remember signing. But the commitment is made. The covenant is binding. Clearwater Heights is thriving. We're a real community. We have block parties and holiday celebrations and neighborhood watch programs. We take care of each other. We follow the rules. We honor our commitments. Forever. I'm writing this during permitted hours, sitting on my perfect porch, looking at my perfect lawn. Tomorrow, I'll submit it to the HOA for approval. They review all resident communications. Section 47, paragraph 12. If they approve, maybe someone will read it. Maybe someone considering a home in a development that seems too perfect will see this and understand. But probably not. The covenant binds us all. Distance doesn't matter. Awareness doesn't matter. Once you commit, even accidentally, even unknowingly, you become part of the community. Clearwater Heights is always growing, always expanding, always looking for new residents. Maybe you've already signed. Maybe you just don't remember yet. The lights come on at 6:47 p.m. They always do. See you at the next HOA meeting, neighbor. Attendance is mandatory. Story 5. The Conservation Area. The abandoned Thornhill Nature Center had been calling my dog for 6 days before I realized the voice was mine. Bailey, my 4-year-old border collie, started sitting at the edge of my backyard fence every evening at dusk, ears perked, staring into the woods that bordered my property. The woods that led, eventually, to Thornhill. 300 acres of conservation land, defunct nature center, and abandoned hiking trails that hadn't been maintained since 2016. On February 11th, 2024, I heard what Bailey was hearing. "Bailey, come here, boy, come on." My voice, my exact voice, coming from deep in the woods. I wasn't speaking. I was standing on my deck. But my voice was out there, calling my dog, using my inflection, my tone, my specific way of saying his name. Bailey whined, looked at me, looked at the woods. His whole body was tense with confusion. "Bailey, come." The voice again, insistent. Exactly how I'd call him during training. Every detail perfect except the direction. I brought Bailey inside. He pressed against the glass door, staring into the darkening woods, tail tucked between his legs. When I tried to pull him away, he growled. Not at me. At something only he could see beyond the fence. The calling continued for hours. My voice, repeating, "Bailey, come here," with increasing urgency. At 11 p.m., it stopped abruptly. Bailey finally relaxed, slept curled at the foot of my bed, but restless, twitching with bad dreams. It happened again the next night, and the next, always at dusk, always my voice, always calling Bailey. On February 15th, my wife Rachel heard it too. We stood on the deck together at 6:47 p.m., listening to my voice echo from the woods, watching Bailey's distress. "That's you?" she said. "How is that you?" "It's not. I'm right here." "But it sounds exactly." The voice changed. "Rachel. Rachel, come here. I need you." Her face went pale. That was my voice too. My worried voice. My "something's wrong, I need help" voice. "Nathan," she whispered. "What the fuck is that?" Before I could answer, a third voice joined. Higher. Younger. "Mommy? Daddy? Where are you?" Our daughter Emma. 3 years old, asleep inside. But her voice was out there in the woods, crying for us. Rachel moved toward the fence. I grabbed her arm. "That's not Emma. Emma's inside." "I know, but..." "Mommy, I'm scared. Come find me." The voice was perfect. Every detail of Emma's speech pattern. The slight lisp on her S's. The way she drew out "scared" into 2 syllables. Exactly our daughter. Rachel pulled away from me and ran inside. Found Emma sleeping peacefully in her bed. But through the open window we could still hear it. Emma's voice, crying and pleading from the darkness. "Please, Mommy, I'm lost. I can't find you." I closed the window. The voice continued, slightly muffled. Emma stirred but didn't wake. Rachel held her, checking for, I don't know what. Proof this was real, Emma. Proof the other voice was fake. But how do you prove your child is real when you can hear an identical child crying in the woods? The voices continued every night, adding more detail, more emotion, more specificity. They learned our phrases, our private jokes. They'd call out things only we would know, reminders about appointments, questions about dinner plans, comments about TV shows we'd watched. And they were always calling us toward Thornhill. On February 20th, I hiked into the woods. Had to know what was doing this. I took my phone, knife, flashlight, left at 2 p.m., full daylight, telling Rachel I'd be back by 5. The trails were overgrown, but still visible. Thornhill Nature Center was 2 miles in, a large building that had once offered educational programs, nature exhibits, a small wildlife rehabilitation facility. Closed after budget cuts, abandoned when the county couldn't afford maintenance. I'd hiked there years ago, before the closure. It had been charming, rustic, full of families and school groups. Now it was just decay. Broken windows, collapsed sections of roof, graffiti on the walls. But as I approached, I heard something. Voices. Dozens of voices, all talking at once, coming from inside. I circled the building, trying to identify what I was hearing. Not quite conversation, more like playback, recordings, overlapping audio of different people speaking. I recognized some of the voices. Mine, Rachel's, Emma's, but also voices I didn't know. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all layering over each other in an incomprehensible wall of sound. The main entrance was chained. I found a broken window and climbed through into what had been the reception area. The interior was gutted, exhibits removed, furniture gone, just empty rooms and peeling paint. But the voices were louder inside, coming from everywhere, from the walls themselves. I followed the sound to the back of the building, to the wildlife rehabilitation section. 6 small rooms where injured animals had once been treated. The doors were closed, but not locked. I opened the first door. The room was empty except for scrawled text covering every surface. Walls, ceiling, floor. Thousands of words written in different hands, different inks, different languages. Some I recognized, most I didn't. But they were all saying the same thing, translated and repeated. I came when it called. The second room was similar. Same text, same message. But with dates, hundreds of dates. Going back to 2017, some as recent as last week. The third room had names, carved into the walls with knives or keys or fingernails. I recognized one name, Michael Torrance. He'd been a missing person case 3 years ago. Local college student disappeared during a hike. Never found. His name was here. Along with a date, March 4th, 2021. The fourth room had possessions, phones, wallets, keys, ID cards, jewelry, dozens of personal items arranged in careful rows on the floor, each with a date written beside it in marker. Michael Torran's student ID was there. March 4th, 2021. The fifth room was locked, not chained, just locked with a regular doorknob lock. I kicked it open. Inside was a mirror, wall-sized, perfectly clean despite the decay everywhere else. And in the mirror, I saw myself standing in the doorway. Except my reflection was smiling, I wasn't smiling. My face was tense, frightened, but the reflection smiled widely. "Nathan," it said. My voice, my mouth moving in the mirror. "You finally came." I backed away. The reflection stayed where it was, still smiling, not mimicking my movements anymore. "We've been calling you for weeks. So glad you're here. There's so much work to do." "What are you?" "We're Thornhill, the center, the conservation area, the woods. We've always been here, but we got better at calling after the center closed, after people stopped visiting. We had time to practice, time to learn voices. Let me leave." The reflection laughed. My laugh, but wrong. "Oh, Nathan, you can leave. Everyone can leave. But you'll want to come back. You'll hear us calling. You'll hear Rachel calling, Emma calling, Bailey calling, all of them begging you to return. They're not here. They're safe at home. For now. But we're learning them. Every day you're near the woods, we learn more. Soon we'll call them perfectly. They'll come. Just like you came. Just like all the others." The mirror showed movement behind my reflection. Figures. Dozens of people standing in the room that should be empty. All of them smiling that same wrong smile. 53 so far, my reflection said. 53 who came when called. They stay now. Help us learn. Help us call more effectively. Michael has been very useful. His voice calls his family every night. His mother still hikes these trails, searching. She'll come eventually. You're keeping them? We're conservation. We preserve. We protect. We keep things in their natural state forever. That's our purpose. These people are conserved, maintained, perfectly preserved in the state they were when they arrived. I ran, back through the building, past the rooms full of names and dates and possessions. The voices followed me. My voice, Rachel's voice, Emma's voice, all calling, pleading, begging me to stay. I made it to the window, climbed through, ran down the overgrown trail. The forest itself seemed to call me back. Every tree, every shadow, every branch scraping in. The wind sounded like, "Nathan, come back." I reached my property at 5:40 p.m. Bailey was at the fence, barking frantically. Rachel was on the deck, crying, phone in hand. "Where were you?" she screamed. "I heard you calling for help. Your voice from the woods saying you were hurt. But you weren't answering your phone." I checked my phone. No signal. Full battery, but no connection. Like something had been blocking it. That night, the calling was worse. All three of our voices now, plus Bailey's barking, all coming from the woods simultaneously. Overlapping, urgent. They knew things they shouldn't. Details from my hike, descriptions of the rooms I'd seen. "Nathan, don't tell Rachel what you found," my voice called. "She won't understand. She'll want to leave. But we need you to stay. All of you need to stay. We didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., Emma woke up screaming. The voices won't stop. Make them stop. She could hear them too. Even with windows closed, doors locked, white noise machines running, the voices penetrated everything. Emma, sweetie, come to the woods. Her own voice called from outside. There are so many friends here, so many children to play with. Come see. I called the police at dawn. Officer Patterson came at 8 a.m. I explained everything. He looked at me like I was insane until we went outside and heard it. Rachel, bring Emma. Nathan's hurt. Come quickly. Patterson's hand went to his weapon. That's your voice. Yes. But you're right here. Yes. He walked toward the fence. This is some kind of recording. Has to be. Someone's fucking with you. Check the nature center. Room with the mirror. You'll find proof. Names, dates, Michael Torrance. He looked at me sharply. Michael Torrance, the missing student? His ID is there, 4th room, along with 52 others. Patterson called for backup. 3 officers searched Thornhill that afternoon. They found the rooms, found the names and dates, found the possessions including Michael Torrance's ID. But they didn't find the mirror. The 5th room was empty. Just another abandoned space. They photographed everything, took evidence, opened a missing persons investigation. But they couldn't explain the voices, couldn't find speakers or recording equipment, couldn't trace any technology that would explain it. Some kind of echo phenomenon, Patterson said. Sound bouncing weird through the valleys, making you hear things. We heard our own voices, our daughter's voice, saying things we never said. He had no answer for that. We tried to leave, put the house on the market. Rachel's sister offered to let us stay with her in Portland. We packed in 3 days, but Emma wouldn't get in the car. She stood at the fence, staring into the woods. They said if we leave, they'll follow, she whispered. They said they've learned us now. They can call us anywhere. We'll always hear them. I picked her up, forced her into the car. She screamed the entire time. Bailey howled. Rachel was crying. We made it 15 miles. Then Emma said, "Stop the car." "No, honey, we're going to Aunt Lisa's. Stop the car. They want to show me something." I looked at Rachel. She was pale, gripping the door handle. "Nathan, I hear it too," she whispered. "They're calling. They're saying they have something that belongs to us. Nothing belongs to us in those woods. They're saying it's Emma's toy, her stuffed rabbit. She lost it last year." Emma perked up. "Fluffy? They found Fluffy?" "No," I said. "This is a trick. They're manipulating." "Nathan?" Rachel said. "I hear your voice. It says if we don't come back, they'll make it worse. They'll call louder. They'll learn our extended family, our friends. They'll spread." The voices were in the car now. Somehow, in the car, though the windows were closed. Emma's voice, my voice, Rachel's voice, all saying, "Come home, come back, come see what we found." I turned the car around. We've been back for 2 weeks. The voices continue every night. But Emma doesn't cry anymore. She goes to the fence at dusk and has conversations with them, with herself, with other children's voices that have been learned and preserved. They're nice, she told me yesterday. They just want friends. They're lonely in the conservation area. Nobody visits anymore. Rachel has started hearing her mother's voice. Her mother died 5 years ago. But now she calls from the woods, asking Rachel to visit, saying she misses her. I know it's not real, Rachel says. But she stands at the fence for hours, listening. Bailey doesn't bark anymore. He sits quietly, ears perked, tail wagging slightly, like he's hearing things he likes. I'm the only one still fighting it, still trying to resist. But it's getting harder. This morning I heard my father, who abandoned us when I was 7, who I haven't spoken to in 33 years. His voice, calling from the woods. "Son, I'm sorry. Come talk to me. Let me explain." I know it's not him. I know Thornhill learned him somehow. From my memories, from my pain. It's using him against me. But I want to go. Want to hear what he'd say. Even knowing it's fake, even knowing I'd be walking into the same trap that caught Michael Torrens and 52 others. The conservation area conserves, preserves, keeps things in their natural state forever. Maybe that's not so bad. Maybe being preserved with my family, in a place where lost things are found and absent people return, is better than fighting. Emma is at the fence now. Her other self is teaching her a song about forests and conservation and staying forever in the green places. Rachel is packing a bag. "Just for a visit," she says, "just to see." I should stop her, should grab Emma and put them both in the car and drive until we hit the ocean. But I hear my father calling, and my mother, and my grandmother who raised me. All of them there in the woods, all of them waiting. All of them perfectly preserved in the state they were when Thornhill learned them from my memories. Tonight at dusk, I think we'll go together, as a family, just to visit, just to see what they've found. The center closed in 2016. But conservation continues. Nature continues. The preservation of all things in their perfect state continues. Thornhill keeps calling. Soon we'll answer. And then Thornhill will learn our voices completely. We'll learn to call our friends, our relatives, our co-workers, everyone we've ever known. The conservation area is growing, learning, preserving more voices, more people, more families. Maybe you've heard it too. Your own voice calling from abandoned places, saying things you never said. Don't go looking for the source. Don't try to understand. And whatever you do, don't answer when it calls your name. Because Thornhill conserves perfectly. And forever is a very long time to be preserved. Story 6. The Tunnel Project. The abandoned subway extension beneath Riverside had been drilling for 48 hours straight when I realized the sound was getting closer. I managed the Riverside Towers apartment complex. 3 buildings with 247 units sitting directly above where the metro project had collapsed in 2019. They'd been excavating a new subway line, 2 miles of tunnel beneath our neighborhood. 6 months in, something went wrong. Cave-in. 8 workers buried. After the bodies were recovered, the project was permanently suspended. Too unstable, too dangerous. The tunnel sealed. The drilling started February 4th, 2024. Low and rhythmic, felt through the building's foundation. Tenants started complaining immediately. I called the Metro Authority. They insisted all equipment had been removed, no active work, no explanation for what we were hearing. But it continued. Day and night, that mechanical grinding, like boring machines chewing through bedrock. Getting louder daily. On February 9th, Mr. Kovac in Unit 412 called me at 3 a.m. "The drilling is in my walls. I can hear it behind the drywall, moving, circling." I went up to check. Stood in his living room and pressed my ear against the wall. He was right. The drilling sound traveled through the interior walls, circling the apartment. Methodical, purposeful. Not random vibration, controlled movement. "Probably pipes," I said, not believing it. Resonance from construction somewhere else. But that night, alone in my office, I heard it in my walls too. And it was closer than it had been in Kovac's apartment, like whatever was drilling was learning the building's layout, exploring, getting nearer to something. On February 12th, I went down to the parking garage, the lowest level, where building foundation met bedrock. In the far corner, near the storm drain, I found something new. A hole, 3 feet in diameter, perfectly circular, cut through 18 inches of concrete floor with surgical precision. The edges were smooth, machine-made, and from inside came that grinding sound, much louder now, coming from directly below. I shone my flashlight down. The hole descended straight into darkness. 15 feet, 20. I couldn't see the bottom, but I could see the walls of the shaft, smooth, manufactured, like it had been drilled with professional equipment, except no one had authorization to drill here. No construction permits, no utility work, nothing. I called the Metro Authority again. They sent an engineer, Dr. Patricia Hayes. She arrived February 13th with scanning equipment. Spent 4 hours examining the hole, checking city records, comparing geological surveys. This shouldn't exist, she said finally. According to our maps, the sealed tunnel is 60 feet below your building. This shaft goes down approximately 47 feet before it angles west, toward the tunnel. Something's digging toward the tunnel, or from it. That night, the drilling stopped. Complete silence for the first time in 9 days. Every tenant noticed. The sudden absence was worse than the noise had been. At 2:37 a.m., I heard something else. Not drilling. Movement. Something climbing up through the shaft in the parking garage, scraping, dragging, getting closer. I went down to look. The hole was unchanged. Dark. Empty. But on the concrete beside it, I found something that made my blood freeze. A hard hat. Yellow. Caked in dried mud and something else. Something dark and organic. On the side, written in permanent marker, Miguel Santos. Miguel Santos had been one of the 8 workers killed in the cave-in 5 years ago. His body recovered, buried at Glenwood Cemetery. I'd attended the memorial service. The company had given all residents invitations, a gesture of community solidarity. His hard hat shouldn't exist. His equipment had been buried with a collapsed tunnel. I took it to Dr. Hayes the next morning. She went pale. I knew Miguel, she said quietly. I supervised that project. This is his... I remember that handwriting. But this was sealed away. Tons of concrete and fill dirt. Nothing from that tunnel should be accessible. Something accessed it. She examined the hard hat more carefully. This mud is fresh, and this organic material, Christ, this is tissue, recent tissue. The drilling started again that night, but different now, faster, more urgent, and I could track it moving through the building, starting in the garage, traveling up through the walls, floor by floor. It reached the first floor at 11 p.m., second floor at midnight, third floor at 1 a.m. Tenants started calling. The sound was in their apartments now, in their bedrooms. Some claimed to see movement, bulges in the drywall, like something pressing from the other side, something trying to get through. Mrs. Patterson in 318 sent me a video at 1:47 a.m. It showed her bedroom wall, a circular bulge about 3 feet in diameter, pushing outward, straining the drywall. The grinding sound was deafening on the recording. Then it receded. The wall returned to normal. The sound moved on. It was searching, room by room, apartment by apartment, looking for something. On February 15th, it found what it wanted. Unit 5 and 12. Tenant named David Reardon, 53 years old. Lived alone. Worked in IT, quiet guy. Paid rent on time, no complaints. I found him at 7 a.m. after multiple tenants reported screaming. His apartment door was locked. I used my master key. David was gone. But his bedroom wall had a hole. Same size, same perfect circle. Drilled straight through drywall, insulation, and exterior brick, leading outside. Except we were on the 5th floor. There was nothing outside but a 5-story drop. I looked through the hole. Saw not the expected alley below, but darkness. A tunnel, extending horizontally from David's bedroom wall into impossible space. The grinding sound echoed from deep inside, receding, taking something with it. On David's bed was a hard hat, yellow, caked in mud. Name on the side, David Reardon. I checked my tenant records. David had moved in August 2019, 4 months after the tunnel collapse. I cross-referenced his application against the news articles about the cave-in. Found a detail I'd missed before. David Reardon had worked on the tunnel project. He'd been scheduled for the shift when the collapse happened, but he'd called in sick that day. 8 coworkers died. He survived by chance, or by guilt. Dr. Hayes came back immediately. She brought structural engineers, metro supervisors, police. They examined the impossible tunnel extending from the 5th floor. They couldn't explain it. Couldn't explain how a horizontal shaft could exist in empty air, held up by nothing. One engineer volunteered to explore it. He tied a rope around his waist and crawled inside with a camera. We watched his footage on a laptop in the hallway. The tunnel was smooth, machine-drilled, extending hundreds of feet. His camera showed walls covered in markings, scratched into the stone with something sharp. Names. 8 names. The names of the workers who died, including Miguel Santos, and recently added, in fresh scratches, David Reardon. "Pull him back," Hayes said. But the rope went slack. On the camera feed, we saw the engineer stop. Saw him turn around to look at something behind him. "There's someone here," he said. His voice was distorted on the audio. "They're wearing a hard hat. They're covered in dirt. They're..." The camera went dark. The rope went limp. We pulled it back. Just rope. No engineer. No camera. The tunnel collapsed 30 seconds later. Not violently. Just closed. The circular hole in David's wall sealed itself, drywall reforming as if it had never been breached. Within 2 minutes, the wall looked completely normal. Fresh paint, no damage. The engineer never emerged. His name was Thomas Lee. The police opened a missing persons investigation. I found his hard hat in my office the next morning. Yellow, muddy. Name written on it, Thomas Lee. The drilling has stopped, for now. But I hear other sounds in the building's foundation. Movement, gathering. Something is down there in the sealed tunnel. Something that survived the collapse. Something that's been digging for 5 years, learning the building, preparing. We've lost 3 residents since David disappeared. They vanished from their apartments overnight. Always quiet tenants. Always people with some connection to the original tunnel project. Family members of victims, former Metro employees, people who'd protested the project back in 2018. Each time, I find a hard hat with their name on it. 23 hard hats now, lined up on my office shelf. I've tried to warn new tenants, tried to explain. But how do you explain that an abandoned tunnel is selectively kidnapping people? That the dead workers are somehow continuing the project from below? That construction never truly stopped. It just became something else. Dr. Hayes thinks they're excavating, building new passages, connecting the city's abandoned infrastructure into a network. She has evidence. Unexplained subsidence across Riverside, buildings settling unevenly, streets developing sinkholes that reveal smooth-walled shafts descending into darkness. "They're not just taking people," she said last week. "They're recruiting, building a workforce. Everyone they take, they put them to work on the project." What project? The tunnel was canceled. Their tunnel wasn't. They died building it. They're still building it. And now they need more workers to complete the job. I found the plans yesterday. In the parking garage, beside the original hole. Not paper, carved into the concrete floor with something sharp. Map, showing tunnels beneath Riverside. Dozens of them. Hundreds. A vast network connecting everything. Residential buildings, schools, hospitals, every structure, and each building marked with a number. Riverside Towers was marked 73-240. 73 hard hats collected out of 240 goal. They need more workers, more people to dig, more people to maintain the project, more people to replace the ones who've worn out. The drilling started again last night, louder than ever. Multiple sources now, not just one machine, but dozens. All around the building, all through the neighborhood, creating an underground complex that shouldn't exist. My door is vibrating. The walls are humming. I can feel them getting closer. I found a hard hat this morning, on my desk. Yellow. Muddy. My name written on it in permanent marker. I never worked on the tunnel project. Never had any connection to it beyond managing this building. But they've marked me anyway. Put me on the workforce list. I'm needed below. The tenants are panicking. 27 families moved out this week, but I can't leave. I'm the manager. I'm responsible. And besides, where would I go? Dr. Hayes showed me the map. The tunnels are everywhere now, under the whole city. There's nowhere in Riverside that isn't connected to the network. Nowhere they can't reach. The hole in my office floor appeared an hour ago. 3 feet in diameter. Perfect circle. Grinding sounds echo from below, and something is climbing up. I can hear it scraping against the shaft walls. Getting closer. Soon it will arrive. Soon I'll see what Miguel Santos and the others have become after 5 years of digging. 5 years of continuing the project. 5 years of building. The tunnel never stopped. It just hired new workers. If you live above abandoned infrastructure, subway projects, sewer systems, mining operations, listen carefully at night. If you hear drilling where no drilling should be, check your walls, check your floors. And if you find a hard hat with your name on it, understand what it means. You've been recruited. The project needs workers. And projects like this never truly end. They just keep drilling. Deeper, darker, forever. Story, second the observation deck. The abandoned fire lookout tower on Rake Mountain had been watching me for 19 days. When I finally understood, I'd been watching back. I was a wildlife photographer. The tower had been my landmark since I started working this region in January 2024. Built in the 1930s, decommissioned in the 90s, standing 80 feet tall on Rake's summit. Perfect for orienting myself. Perfect for finding my bearings in the dense forest. On February 6th, I noticed the windows. The tower had 4 windows, one facing each cardinal direction. They'd always been broken, empty, just dark openings. But that morning, during a sunrise shoot 3 miles away, I looked through my telephoto lens and saw something in the north-facing window. A figure, standing, watching. I adjusted focus. The image clarified. It was a person in ranger uniform, standing perfectly still, staring directly at me. No, not at me, at my camera, at the lens pointed at the tower. I lowered the camera, looked with naked eyes. Too far to see details, but the silhouette was visible. Still there, still watching. I raised the camera again. The figure was closer now. Right against the window, face pressed to the glass that shouldn't exist. And it was holding something, binoculars, pointed at me, watching me watch it. I left immediately, hiked back to my truck, drove to the ranger station in Oakmont and reported what I'd seen. Ranger Willis checked the logs. Nobody's authorized at that tower. Been sealed for 30 years. We do structural inspections twice yearly. Last one was November. It was empty then. Someone's there now. Squatters, maybe. We'll check it out. 2 rangers hiked up and that afternoon called me at 4 p.m. Tower's locked and empty. No signs of entry. No footprints in the dust inside. Whatever you saw, it wasn't someone in the tower. But I had photographs. I showed Willis, zoomed in on the figure in the window. He stared at the image for a long time. "That's a CCC-era uniform," he said finally. "Civilian Conservation Corps, 1930s. Nobody wears those anymore except for historical reenactments. And the face..." He zoomed in further. The figure's face was strange, too symmetrical, too perfect, like a mannequin or a photograph. Not quite real. "Probably a dummy," Willis said. "Someone's idea of a joke. We'll remove it next inspection." I went back to work. 3 days later, February 9th, I was photographing elk near Crane Meadow. 6 miles from the tower, I set up my telephoto rig, scanned the horizon. The tower was visible in the distance. And in every window now, figures stood, 4 of them, all in ranger uniforms, all perfectly, still, all facing my direction, all holding binoculars. I took photographs. When I reviewed them later, I noticed something that made my hands shake. The figures weren't identical. They were different people, different faces, and each face matched historical photographs I found in the library's archive. Actual fire lookouts who'd staffed Rake Mountain Tower between 1934 and 1992. Thomas Greer, 1934-1947. Sandra Melville, 1948-1963. Joseph Kwan, 1964-1981. Robert Talley, 1982-1992. All of them in the tower, all of them watching me. All of them supposed to be dead, the oldest for 90 years. I stopped photographing near the tower, started working the eastern quadrant instead, 20 miles away. But on February 15th, during a shoot at Silver Lake, I noticed something in my telephoto lens. Far in the background of my elk photographs was a structure. Not the tower, too close, too different. I zoomed the image, enhanced it. It was a smaller observation post. Just a platform and cabin, abandoned decades ago. And in the window stood a figure in ranger uniform, watching, holding binoculars pointed toward my position. I checked my maps. The post wasn't supposed to exist, not on any official survey. But it was there in my photographs, visible between 2 ridges. Over the next week, I found more. Observation structures that shouldn't exist. Towers that weren't on maps. Platforms in impossible locations. Each one with figures in the windows. Each one watching. They appeared in the backgrounds of all my photographs now. No matter where I worked, no matter which direction I faced. There was always a structure visible somewhere. Distant but clear through my lenses. Always occupied. Always watching back. On February 24th, I realized they were getting closer. A structure that had been 5 miles away in my morning shoot was 3 miles away by afternoon. A tower that had been visible only through my longest telephoto lens was suddenly visible through my medium lens. They were moving, repositioning, converging on my locations. That night, I developed a theory. I'd been photographing this forest for 6 weeks. taking thousands of images. My camera pointed at the landscape constantly, documenting everything, watching everything. What if the forest was watching back? What if something in these abandoned observation structures, something that had been watching for decades, recognized another watcher? And what if it didn't like competition? The next morning, I left my cameras in the truck, hiked to a meadow empty-handed. Just my eyes, just observation. No structures appeared, no watchers, just normal forest. But when I returned to my truck and checked the security camera I'd left running on the dashboard, I saw something in the footage. While I'd been hiking, a figure in ranger uniform had approached my truck, had looked in the windows, had examined my camera equipment, had picked up my primary camera, my Nikon D850, and looked directly into the lens. Then it had raised the camera, pointed it at the trail I'd taken, and taken photographs of me. I found the camera on the driver's seat. I hadn't left it there. And the memory card had new images. 47 photographs, all of me, hiking, sitting, resting, shot from angles I couldn't explain, overhead angles, impossible perspectives. And in the background of each photo, barely visible, were structures, dozens of them. Towers and posts and observation platforms, all around the meadow where I'd thought I was alone. All occupied, all watching. I tried to leave, drove toward Oakmont, but every road led me in circles. I'd head north, check my GPS, confirm my route, then find myself back at the same intersection near the forest boundary. Like the roads were rearranging, like something was preventing my departure. My phone started receiving texts from unknown numbers. You're in our observation zone. Please remain in designated areas. Unauthorized photography is prohibited. Please submit equipment for inspection. All watchers must register with the observation service. Report to nearest tower for orientation. I didn't respond, but the texts continued. Dozens per hour. Instructions, regulations, rules for proper observation protocol. That night, parked at a trailhead, I saw lights. Flashlights, moving through the forest, converging on my position. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Figures emerged from the trees. Rangers, all in historical uniforms spanning decades, all carrying binoculars, all moving with that same perfect synchronization. They surrounded my truck, stood in silent rows, watching me through the windows. One approached the driver's door, knocked. I recognized his face from the archives. Thomas Greer, the first tower watchman, dead since 1963. "Sir, you've been documenting without authorization," he said. His voice was formal, administrative. All observation in this district requires licensing. You've been operating illegally for 6 weeks. I'm a wildlife photographer. I have permits. Wildlife photography permits don't cover watchtower jurisdiction. You've been observing our observation posts, recording our personnel. That's surveillance. That's violation of protocol. Your posts are abandoned. Your personnel are dead. Greer smiled. Observation never stops. The service is eternal. Once you're assigned to watch, you watch forever. Death doesn't excuse duty. The other figures nodded in unison. You have 2 options, Greer continued. Option 1, submit your equipment, surrender your cameras, stop watching our forest, leave and never return. What's option 2? Join the service. You've demonstrated aptitude, your constant documentation, your attention to detail, your dedication to observation. These are valuable skills. We're always seeking new watchers, new eyes to expand our coverage. And if I refuse both options? Greer's expression didn't change. Then you become what we watch. Every photographer eventually does. You spend so much time looking through lenses, you forget you're being observed too. You become the subject, the documented, the watched. He handed me something through the window. A photograph. Recent. Showing me sleeping in my truck bed last night. Taken from directly above. From an angle that would require floating 60 feet in the air. "We've been documenting you," Greer said. "Building a file. 6 weeks of observations. Every location you visited, every subject you photographed, every moment you thought you were alone. We have thousands of images. You're very well documented now." I looked at the photograph. In the background, barely visible, was my face on a display screen. In some observation post somewhere. Being watched in real time. What do you want? Your service? Your eyes? Your commitment? The forest needs watching. Wildlife. Weather. Terrain changes. Fire hazards. And other photographers. People like you who think they're just taking pictures, not realizing they're part of what's being observed. How many others? 47 photographers have worked this forest since 1992. We've recruited 46. You're the last active independent observer. Join us, and the district will finally be fully staffed. He handed me a uniform, historical, 1930s style, my size. Your assignment is the new observation post we're constructing, at your current location. This trailhead has excellent sight lines. You'll monitor it, forever. Your first duty shift begins at 0600. And if I refuse? The figures raised their binoculars in unison. 47 pairs of lenses, all focused on me. "Then we keep watching," Greer said. "We document every moment, every breath, every heartbeat. We observe you until observation becomes you. Until you can't exist without being watched. Until the weight of all those eyes makes you transparent. Makes you part of the landscape. Makes you another thing we see but don't acknowledge. People will notice I'm missing. People notice missing photographers every year. The forest is dangerous. Accidents happen. Equipment fails. People get lost." He smiled. "Or they find what they were looking for and decide to stay." I looked at the uniform in my lap. Looked at the figures surrounding my truck. Looked at my cameras on the passenger seat, my tools, my career, my identity for 15 years. What's a photographer but someone who watches? Someone who observes? Someone who documents reality from the other side of a lens? Maybe I'd already been part of the observation service. Maybe I'd been training for this my whole career. "What happened to the others?" I asked. "The 46 you recruited?" Greer gestured to the crowd. I looked closer. Some of the figures were wearing modern clothing underneath their ranger uniforms. Modern hiking boots. Recent gear. And their faces, I recognized some from photographer forums online. People who'd stopped posting, stopped updating, disappeared from the community without explanation. "They're watching," Greer said. "Just like you'll be watching. Forever. It's good work. Meaningful work. The forest needs eyes. I'm writing this from my new post. They constructed it overnight. A platform 40 feet high, cabin barely large enough for one person. My cameras are here, all of them. Set up on tripods. Pointing in different directions, documenting constantly. I watch the forest now, officially. 24 hours a day. The service doesn't believe in off-duty time. Observation is continuous, eternal. I've seen 16 other photographers in the past week, professionals like I was. They don't know they're being watched. Don't know that every shot they take is being documented from 47 different angles. Don't know they're building files. Being evaluated. Being recruited. 3 of them will receive visits soon. Greer told me yesterday. 3 more watchers joining the service. I take their photographs now, document their positions, report their activities. That's my assignment. That's what I do. Sometimes I wonder if I'm dead. If I died that night and just haven't realized it yet. If the observation service is what happens to people who spend their lives watching, we become watchers forever. But it doesn't matter. Dead or alive, I'm watching. That's my function, my identity, my eternal assignment. If you're reading this, you're probably a photographer. Maybe you work in wilderness areas. Maybe you've noticed structures in your backgrounds, abandoned towers, historical posts, things that shouldn't be there. Maybe you felt watched. You are. We're always recruiting. The forest needs eyes. And once you've spent enough time watching, you become what you observed. My shift never ends. The service is eternal. Welcome to the Observation District. We've been waiting for you. Report to your assigned tower at 0600.